Welcome to the Hunt Test Hobo Podcast, your place for truckside chats and insights into the retriever game. Whether you're just getting started or you're a seasoned handler, this podcast is another resource for tips, tricks, and insights from both the amateurs and professional trainers' perspectives. Each week, we'll dive into the nitty-gritty of retriever training, sharing stories of success, overcoming challenges, and forging stronger bonds with our dogs. This is the Hunt Test Hobo Podcast. I'm Chris Rudd, your host, fellow retriever enthusiast, and student of the game. Let's dive in. Welcome to another episode of the Hunt Test Hobo Podcast. As always, I hope you all are having a fantastic week. I've had just a whirlwind. If you listen to the bonus episode that released a couple weeks ago, you know that we got puppies here. And when there's puppies, there's chaos. And when you homeschool and your kids are all home, it's just nuts. Okay, so it's been nuts here. But all good. Puppies are doing great. Mom's doing a lot better and super happy. I'm also super happy today to have the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Pat Burns. Pat, welcome.
Great to be here, Chris. I appreciate it. Now, do you homeschool these guys because their phys ed is throwing birds, I gather?
Oh, I'll tell you what. My 10-year-old daughter, she can't throw a duck very good, but an ATB, she's got it within a 5-foot circle every time. I just put a little piece of tape down, and she knows how to drive the ATV, so I'm set.
Sounds like you got the program going.
Oh, yeah. She loves it. It's great. But the problem is I don't get her in the mornings when I train, so it's got to be once or twice in the evenings. But that has been an absolute thrill to have her doing that. And I pay her an entire $1 every time. And she saved that money, and she just bought a second parakeet, and she is excited as can be for her parakeet. Now, I'm not as excited for that parakeet because it used to be right outside my office, and when those two parakeets get going, it's quite loud. It's surprisingly loud.
I'll tell you a story about something a little similar in a minute from my background. So,
yeah. Well, Pat, before we get going, I know you're partnered with Purina. You said you're a field rep, and I just want to throw that out that the podcast is sponsored and partnered with Purina, and excellent. I absolutely love their food. Been feeding it for 6 or 7 years, and absolutely no complaints, and just love it. So thank you for joining us, and thank you to Purina for everything that they do to support all the retriever games. Well, Pat, before we get too deep into this, I know a lot of folks who listen to the podcast probably know who you are, but for those that don't, can you give me, 5-minute, kind of like the 5-minute version of, your entire life, which we'll see how concise you can be.
Very good. Well, I grew up not far from where you're sitting there, Chris. I grew up in Maryville, Indiana, right across the state line. And I don't know how much you know about the history of that Illinois, Indiana area, but do you know where River Oaks is in Torrance Avenue? Right?
Yeah, I've heard you talk about this on other stuff. I don't remember where, but yeah, I've heard the story, I think. I've heard of River Oaks, and was it you guys that were training at the railroad place? Is that
that's where these guys trained. These guys were worked in the steel mills, the oil refineries up in Whiting, and there was a group of really dedicated amateurs when I first got started. I got started in 1980. I was a senior in high school, but the reason I bring up River Oaks because the all-time high point retriever in AKC history for field trials is a dog named River Oaks Corky, who is from about probably 35 minutes from where you're sitting right now.
Yeah. Yeah. My mentor, Dan Erkey, said that he knew of the owner or had seen the dog when he was really little.
John Trapaz was the owner, and John ended up selling the dog. John worked in, I think, Donnelly Printing Company. So these guys they were juggling a job and a family just like you are right now. And they were my early training group, the guys. And I started like so many people. And, you're not far from the Kankakee River.
Nope.
And my best friend growing up, Andy Attar, who's also in the industry, well known as, and I about the day we stepped into the Kankakee River and went over our waders was the day we said we need a dog. Yeah. This isn't going to work. And so that's kind of how it all happened. I ended up getting a Chesapeake Bay Retriever. I don't know why I picked that, but I did. And Andy was my training partner, and we hunted and fished together as much as we could, being right outside in an area like we grew up. And well, one thing led to another. I ended up meeting some field trialers and in that area. My first training partner was a guy by the name of Tom Felinsky, and you may have heard his name. I think he's still doing it. And I got introduced to a really dedicated group of amateurs that I just described. So I had just out of high school. My father was owning an insurance agency, and my brothers worked there, and it looked kind of that's where I was headed until my dad sat me down in the office and told me, son, don't spend your life behind the desk. And that's all I needed to hear. And at about that time, I was about 21, I guess. And I took off for California. And the reason I went to California is I went to train with Rex Carr. And the reason I went to train with Rex Carr, because in 1981, I was at Bong Recreation Area, where the Grand was not that long ago. And my dad and I were headed fishing in northern Wisconsin, and I went and saw the National Amateur, and I saw two handlers at that National. That it was the first National I'd ever seen. And the two handlers just really left a dramatic impression on me. And those handlers were Judy Aycock and Delma Hazard. Delma ended up winning that National with a dog named Dude's Double or Nothing. But their presence, their style, their crispness, was so markedly different than anybody else I had watched. I was really taken back by it. I studied that a little bit, and I realized that they had been trained by Rex Carr, and Rex was really the trainer of many successful amateurs. And that's where I decided, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to try to do it right. So I loaded up, worked a couple summer jobs, and took off for California, and I spent a couple summers there, and then I decided I was going to spend an extended period of time. And just about the time I was running out of money, and I was thinking, well, I guess the real world's going to kick in. I got a call. I was in St. Ignatius, Montana, and I was chasing Judy Aycock and Bill Schrader around and running a qualifying dog and throwing birds for them. And I got a call, and they said, Mike Lardy's on the phone. And I thought, Mike Lardy, I knew of Mike. This was before he was the Mike we know today. And he said, I understand you're probably about out of money and you might want a job. And he offered me a job, and that went to work for Mike in the fall of 1984. And here we are, 41 years later about, and I've never done anything else other than I did take a 1-year break, and I went and spent a year outside of Fairbanks, Alaska, and worked for Nestle Purina, but worked with a good friend of mine named Dr. Arlie Reynolds, who's a nutritional research scientist, and was for Purina at the time, and we're good friends. As a matter of fact, I'm going to see Arlie on Sunday, and he's moved to Sitka. We've become close friends. But other than that, I spent that entire time watching dogs retrieve birds and bumpers and all those sorts of things. So I spent 20 years. I worked for Mike for a handful of years, moved to Michigan, started Esprit Kennels, and had a very successful operation there from the late 80s through 2006. And there's a number of dogs you probably see: Esprit's Power Play, Esprit's Out of the Woods. There's probably 11. Those were dogs that I actually had owned as puppies and started. But we had a very aggressive field trial group that Cherokee Rose won the 2003 National. Candlewood Shadow was on our truck. One of the best yellow dogs that I'd ever seen, named Candlewood's Captain Kidd, was owned by a guy not far from you, and he ran in that area in Illinois. So we were just full steam ahead running field trials until 2006, and sold my business and had a little life change and went to Alaska at that point. And at about the 29th day in a row, and it never got warmer than 30 below zero, I started to rethink the difference. Matter of fact, it was my job in the morning to go out, which I really liked, because at that point I didn't have to make decisions. I just followed instructions. So I would care for close to 100 sled dogs that were in training.
Wow.
And I would jump on a snowmobile, or snow machine, as they call it up there, and I'd drag a trail groomer, because it was on their training trail. They had a trail system where a number of sled dog kennels were connected to, and it was a 40-mile loop. And I would drag 40 miles of trail first thing in the morning to get ready for these different kennels to work their dogs. And I'd get to the 20-mile turnaround, and I'd get on the phone, and Andy'd be in shorts running a water blind in Georgia, and I'm going like, So, but I loved it. I wouldn't have traded it for anything. It was an experience that I'll never forget. I checked some things off my list, came back to the lower 48, and actually went back to work for Mike for a number of years. And that's where Ray Vogt and I became good friends and training partners. And we had a great time together. We had, Charlie Hines' Mickey that was there, Grady, Traveler, Roxy. These are all dogs that won nationals in that stretch, and had a great time. Had a boat, fished, did kind of what I wanted. And then I met a Southern girl, and things changed again for me. And I moved to Bristol, Tennessee, where I am now. And at that point, I started to do seminars, workshops. I had done a number of seminars with Mike along the time, but that ramped up. And here I am today, still training dogs, still loving it. Still, I always loved the coaching of people. I probably went to 17 or 18 national amateurs in a row, and I was always charged up at the motivating people and trying to get dogs to run their best and get the most out of them. And so I get to do that. And the thing that I get to do now is meet new people and new dogs pretty much on a regular basis. So the challenge of being a quick study and for both the dogs and the owners is really a fun challenge for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a bunch of
questions. So here we are today.
Of that. Yeah, I got a bunch of good ones. I think, well, first of all, when you're in Alaska, totally different game than I'm not sure if they call it a game, a totally different sport than you've been used to. What was one of the things that you kind of took away that the listeners would love to hear about, or maybe a perspective on dogs, or just anything that you felt
absolutely
helped you to be a better dog guy?
Well, I need to explain my motivation for being there to begin with. Bob West at Purina, a number of years earlier, I contacted and I said, Bob, I know a lot about dog training, but I don't know much about conditioning and nutrition. So he put me in touch with their senior nutritional research scientist, Dr. Arlie Reynolds. And Arlie is the guy I went to work for. So I went to Alaska, A, to spend time in Alaska, but B, to witness what true, incredible athletic dogs look like, are trained like, are fed like. And that's why I was there. So my takeaway was, the amazing conditioning programs that they do, and what I believe we incorporate more now with our dogs, and how important a great diet is, and understanding weight management, reading dog gaits, because in sled dog teams, they'll run typically 16 dogs to begin with, but they will detect the most minute change in gait, because really the case is the team is only as fast as their slowest dog. So when a dog has a little bit of a hitch in his gait or is a little limp, I became better at reading dogs' gait patterns and looking for early injuries. And and just watching dogs of different, the modern sled dog is a mixed breed. Alaskan Husky is a mixed breed. I know we're not talking about Siberian Huskies. We're talking about Alaskan Huskies. But these dogs were crossed with German Shorthairs and Greyhounds and all kinds of different things. And I guess and they had a very detailed breeding program. I mean, you'd think, oh, it's random. No, it was anything but random. What I did witness, when you focus on structure and form and things like that, how they're able to limit the, cruciate injuries and things like we encounter. Now, their focus is different. They're breeding, their focus for speed and certain things. And, we've got to do a lot of other things in the world of retrievers. We have to have a lot of trainability. We have to have marking. We have to have, all kinds of stuff. And when you focus on one trait, other traits suffer. So I guess I learned, more about the understanding of isolating traits and bloodlines and things like that, and what you can accomplish, and what you do realize, because dog generations turn over so much faster than we do as humans, how quickly you can change the complexion of a breed or a bloodline for the better, hopefully. And I think we have in retrievers, especially in Labradors.
Yeah,
I've seen a huge change from 30 years ago in the modern Labrador.
Yeah. And I hear people talking all the time about the difference in them and just how much the training tools have changed that, and the information that we have and the techniques, how that's just drastically changed the temperament of the dogs we're looking for.
Absolutely.
And such. So it's a lifetime of dogs, really, for you. It's a lifetime of retrievers, with that nice detour. Why are you so in love with it? Why? Because it can't be that you're making a killing. It's got to be because you like it.
Oh, it's all about the dogs. It really is. And I guess my motivation for my teaching format and coaching format, I love to work with people, and I love to see them enjoy the hobby that's been my life, spending life around dogs. But the better I can coach people to be better trainers, more thoughtful trainers, the better I'm being to the dogs in general. And I think the dogs have given so much to me. I want to give something back to them. So if I can mentor people to be, and I use the word kind, but there's a strictness involved in that. There's the tough love factor. Don't get me wrong. But the better the technique, the better understanding of what motivates them, and the better decisions I can show people to make, and I can make myself, really the better quality of life we're giving these dogs that have pretty much been my entire life. And I spend, I can't even begin to imagine the percentage of my life I've spent either training or thinking about training. And I still do it today. And I finished a couple workshops, and after 4 days, I was disappointed we were done, because I thought we were just getting started. So I guess when my dad said, don't spend your life behind a desk, I have to admit, I don't think after 40 years behind his desk, he was excited to spend another day behind it. But I can tell you, every day I get to watch dogs work, I don't care how bad a day or frustration or things I'm hearing about on the news, the first dog takes off in the field, and I just go into a mellow mode, and I smile outwardly and internally. And
you go into a mellow mode. I love that. Like, there was this movie I watched. I can't remember what it was. It wasn't a good movie, but there's this one scene where these cops were running really, really fast, and they're like doing a chase, and then he gets on the radio, he's like, so we're going to go do this, and then that, and then this, and then really fast again, and he's all excited, and the people are shooting, but then he talks really, and for whatever reason, that scene has mentally stuck with me about about retrieving or teaching retrievers. It's just like, mellow out and slow down and don't get excited. Things are going to happen. You're going to react. It's going to all be fine. And as a person who I'm going to use the word explosive, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, like,
right.
I was a wrestler. I did all the very intense things.
Yeah.
To go to a very mentally stimulating thing or practice has taught me so much as a human being. Just to slow down, and I'm so much better of a trainer because I kind of just I have a different attitude. Like, not everything is about the expectation of precision. Now it's so much more about the activity of teaching, and let it and I love mellow. You said mellow, right? I'm not putting that word in your mouth.
No,
right?
no, that's exactly what I said.
Yeah. And I that's a good descriptor of it. And I think a lot of amateurs need to hear that. Like,
you could be passionate. You could be passionate and mellow at the same time.
Yeah. 100%.
I mean, I've learned to flip. I mean, you were a wrestler. You had to, anytime, and I'm sure you use some of your lessons in one-on-one competition, and you've dialed in that mentality on game day. And, if you don't have that, you're not gonna succeed. But you also have to have that calm under the surface deal and be able to, keep your composure and deal with the unexpected things. And, each dog is different. I mean, and you hear that's such a cliche, but it is so true in every scenario. So you're constantly challenged to try to read what's going on and mainly why it's happening and what's motivating the behavior, and how we can do a little bit better job to shift it in a better direction. And it really is what I do. And there was a time where I was hungry to win every field trial I could win, and win nationals and all of that. But then you shift to how I described how I feel today about the quality of the dogs' lives that I work with, the joy of the owners, and just putting a team together. So they're enjoying their life, their experience with their dogs, and the dogs are thriving under that. And that really is what motivates me to do everything I do professionally.
Yeah, absolutely. You're talking about the the aggressive. I think I've become way more zen or mellow to the dog, but not always my bird help. Like, why did you wait? Throw the bird, help the person, help the dog. What are you doing? Like, I get a little excited about that when that doesn't go as planned.
Well, there's times where timing is everything.
Oh yeah, that's exactly right.
So I have to ask you, are you a better parent because you're a dog trainer, or are you a better dog trainer because you're a parent?
Oh, I think I'm a better parent because I'm a dog trainer.
Yeah.
I try to make things so obnoxiously black and white to my kids. And my wife is like, why don't you just try to listen more? I'm like, no, I'm setting rules,
I've got to work on those line manners.
Yeah. Table manners, that's what I call it,
Oh,
Get
yeah.
your elbows on the table. We have zero reinforcement of that. We need to send them to Miss Manners or something, because that I'm just like, whatever, we'll do what we want to do.
And Chris, let me just tell you, my experience working with Purina has allowed me to go to herding dog events, and I've gotten to know the world of Springer Spaniels, and I spent time in the world of competitive sled dogs, and it's just, I love it all, and I've got to meet some incredible people that are very successful in their arenas, and it's taught me more, and I've grown a great bond with that, and it just enriches my overall experience.
Yeah. So as we're talking about other games, you come from the cream of the crop, the field trials, running opens, running national events, coaching clients that are running that, having success. And now you're with your new role as a teacher and working with Purina, you're seeing new games. I'm sure, like, had you ever been to any other games besides field trials before?
Yeah. I was Hunt Test started, there were no Hunt Tests when I first started. And then they started in, I think it was the mid to late 80s. So it wasn't long after that. So they held some events on some properties that I was on. I was with running a 22 field trial schedule, 2 nationals, and a 24 dog truck. You really didn't witness much of anything else. But again, I grew up as a hunter, and I always thought, even in the world of field trials, to promote what I thought were the great hunting skills, the perseverance. I look for, the courage kind of test. Those are the things, the Des Plaines Wildlife Area, right where you're near. They had some floodings back there, and it was you ran trials in places where you might duck hunt. So I think the early field trials more resembled some of that stuff. When we went to more groomed grounds, it has changed, but my blood is in. I've always thought of these dogs more in the world of being hunting dogs than premier athletes. Yeah. So I embrace it, and I love it. And I'll tell you what I do love is my goal is just, to make or help make the handler and dog just a little bit better than they were the day before. If I could teach them one thing. And so, I get great joy in training dogs of every skill level and every breed. And sometimes, the great dogs was around. It was a true joy to be next to them, but I never felt that those types of dogs are going to be good in spite of you. My greatest accomplishments were not my greatest dogs. They were some of my greatest challenges. And that goes on today.
Yeah. There's a lot of questions I have after that. But so talking about the game, so you've now you went to Master National, you went to the Crown twice now, yes, I think, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then was this your first Grand that you saw at Bong?
No, I was at the Grand. I was Grand in Georgia the year before.
Oh, okay, you were there. Okay.
So I went to that one with Ray Vogt. So I've gone to 2 Grands, and I went to the first Master Amateur National that was in Georgia.
Yeah,
and covered it a little bit like I just did the Master Amateur Invitational in Maine. And so, I've been to maybe a dozen of their bigger events. But I've and a number of people that were running hunt tests would come train with me. So I didn't necessarily, that we would be modifying maybe field trial tests to accommodate them. But I always stayed abreast, and I always, I always admired it. And, I know there's often in some places there's a divide between the sports. There certainly isn't in me personally. I've always been fond of anybody that spends time trying to spend time with their dog in the outdoors and make them better, no matter what venue they're in.
Yeah. Coming into this sport, I haven't really seen much divide between like field trials and hunt tests. I will say that there's some folks that have a divide between AKC and UKC, which I think that line's even blurring even more to where, people just run everything. I'm sure you don't know too much about me, but like I ran the Grand many times, had a lot of success there. I ran 3 Qs and got 2 seconds. I love running and run SRSs. I love running all the games. And at some point I might have to decide to focus on something, but I really just enjoy all of them. I enjoy the transitioning of kind of this transition of seasons. Like I run the spring Grand, so normally the beginning of the year is getting ready for the Grand. Then I switch into more field trial work, getting ready for field trials and SRSs, and then the fall comes back and I switch back to hunting. I love that part of it. But anyway, I wanted to know.
It's just got to produce such a well-rounded dog, and a well-rounded trainer in yourself. So I think that's fantastic. I was always one that that felt I want to hear more, I want to learn more techniques, and I want to make up my own mind. As a professional, I had to focus on what my clients were paying me to do. But today, I focus on what my clients are paying me to do. And I have a lot of different clients that wear different hats. And so I'm headed to 3 workshops in the West, and all 3 of those clubs are hunt test clubs. And I'm excited to go. Super excited.
Yeah. So what was your first impression, or what were your overall impressions, maybe not first, of the Grand and kind of how that game? Because I think the Grand is pretty different than most other tests.
Well, I certainly, and I went to every every venue and watched a little bit of every test. I actually filmed some of every test, and there were they were all nice, but there were a number that were really I thought super well thought out and very challenging. And the dogs are, because of the marked blinds combination and the nature of things, those dogs are a little bit more on edge, a little more challenging, possibly to have control in some of the situations on some of the blinds. And I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I was impressed by the challenges, and I was inspired to, I guess, coach some of my people on things that I thought I could help them be more successful at in that venue, coming from the venue I was in. Because I think that, I just, we're doing the same things. We really are. We're trying to do marks and blinds. We want enough natural ability to think their way through certain types of marks. We need enough control to keep them at our side and cooperative. They need to sit on a whistle. They need to change direction. They need to get in the water and stay in the water when they're told. And it's a constant balancing act. So, what the final goal is just determined by what sport you're doing. But I firmly believe that the approach, the attention to detail and fundamentals and basics are the same. The only thing changes is what jacket you put on and what distance you're throwing. I think a lot of the other things are the bells and whistles. But once you get the true fundamentals of what a dog needs to do to be a great retriever, these dogs adapt incredibly well to different atmospheres. And, whether you're wearing blowing duck calls, shooting a deal from the line, these dogs are probably way more adaptable than we are as humans.
Yeah. So what are, like, for the folks that might have ran like AKC Master Hunter stuff, and they're like, hey, I want to switch over, and not switch over, but I'll also run, the Grand. I've been hearing a lot about that, and I want to run that. What are kind of some of the things that you saw that now you're coaching your clients on that maybe you hadn't considered working on before you saw the Grand?
Well, certainly at the Grand, the strictness of line manners is much stronger, but I believe in that to begin with. Certainly the expectation and the standard is higher in that regard. And really, coming from the world of field trials, I appreciate excellence. So anytime somebody's trying to raise the bar to reward better training and better behavior, I'm all in. So I certainly feel that the Grand does that. The style of shooting from the line, I think those are, again, to me, that's the bells and whistles part of it. You certainly have to get the dog used to following the gun and turning with you and doing those kinds of things. Learning what I didn't see in the Grands, because I left, I didn't see the upland section. Mm-hmm. So that's something I need to see. I mean, I've hunted pheasants not far from where you are with all my retrievers and the field trial dogs, but as far as how the upland is managed at a Grand, I haven't been a part of that.
Yeah.
So that'd be something I would need to see.
If you're in Tennessee, there are plenty of UKC upland stuff that's happening, and that happens in the wintertime. Like all of our upland tests are in the winter. So if you ever want to just show up to one of those, you'd get a good picture.
I need to do that. Absolutely.
Because that to me it's like going back to that like rotation of different games that you can play. Like I love just doing one upland test each year just to get out there, do something different. I have zero desire to upland hunt pheasants for anything more than doing it for the dogs. I'm a lazy guy that likes to sit in a cornfield somewhere. But a lot of my friends really like pheasant hunting, and I'll never forget my good friend Tyler and Dan. This was during COVID, and I had just gotten over COVID, and they're like, "Yeah, we're gonna go hunt a few scratch birds at their hunting preserve," and we get out there, and these are basically wild birds because they have like some fields that they don't touch, and they're essentially wild birds. And they said, "You ready? Go!" And 2 dogs and them just start running. And I'm like, what? This is not what I've went pheasant hunting in Iowa, and you got pointers and you're doing all that. It's
or you block casual, the end of the field.
Yeah. You have blockers. It's just casual walk and enjoying it. No, they just start running, and I'm like, holy cow! Because they're flushing dogs are just going to get on top of these dogs, and we're running, and then by about the 27th flush of these birds just coming everywhere, I am dying from COVID. I'm just I can't go on anymore. I think I just had to sit down in the field. I'll never forget that. They were giving me such a hard time. You guys have never had this. And then they got COVID and then they understood. Not from me. It was months later, but I'll never forget that experience. They're just start running with not letting me know at all what's about to happen. So
Chris, tell me what you think is the biggest difference between a Master National and a Grand, other than the pass rate. I mean, I saw one of those groups. I think one of those groups only passed 6 or 7 dogs.
Yeah, the difference is there's no room. You get one failure.
Right.
That's the major difference. And I mean, it's talked about a lot, but people don't realize until you've ran quite a few Grands that how much the sequencing of those tests, which is completely random, how that can really impact. Because if you get one knock on you, you're riding on that ones the whole time. You just have no room for failure. Versus the point system that AKC uses, if you have a bad day, but you still did good work in other areas, you can make that up. So there's no room. To me, the standard or the level of difficulty may not be what a field trial is, but from a pass-fail system, it is the highest standard for excellence. The dogs have to mark this bird in a specific area, put on a very disciplined hunt. I think that's a major difference. You're not allowed to backside a gun. You are pretty much at it. So the dog has to truly mark that bird and stay in that area. And the blinds are everything's just stricter because the standard I think is stricter is the summary of that all. I definitely train way different on blinds the couple weeks leading up to the Grand. If my dog is not crossing that line multiple times and almost overcasting, you could have some problems.
Is that more the way you handle or the way you train?
What I set up and what I allow the dogs to do. So I will let them get out early and make sure that they on a down ashore blind, I'll make sure they get out and I'll make sure I get a big cast, and I'll do a lot more bailout blinds where I have a destination in my mind, but if they give me any sort of grief, they're going to something that's taking more water.
And we call them emergency blinds. So absolutely the same thing.
Yep. Versus when I train for a field trial, I'm trying to be very tight in this corridor and much less angle than when I'm trying to get at a Grand.
Okay.
So I don't know if that's right, but that's what's worked for me.
Well, it sounds like it has. What I will tell you is that I have to applaud the higher standard, because really the whole idea of all of these of the hunt test world, whether it was HRC or AKC, was to try to find the best hunting dogs. I mean, that's really what the field trial game started out as well. You were trying to get the elite hunting dogs, temperament, ability, training, so that you bred to them and and you had better hunting dogs. And that really, so if you don't have that standard, then people that don't know any different don't necessarily have anything to go by when they are trying to get, premier breeding stock.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the fact that there's so many Grand dogs now that grew up playing the Grand game that are starting to run cues, because you're starting to see some really well-rounded dogs that are coming through that. And I know that has been happening a lot with master hunters moving into cue work, but just more recently I've seen a lot more dogs that primarily grew up in the Grand or the HRC space moving into that. I think that's really cool.
And certainly the folks that are playing the SRS game are forced to be the well-rounded because they have to do all three.
Yep. That's the reason I primarily got into field trials, is because my goal was SRSs. And I was like, I don't know if you remember this, but I actually called you and had a phone call right after I got my first, or Winter got her grand title, and I knew I wanted to switch to running field trials. And you and I had a phone call. It wasn't very long. And because I was concerned, like, because she's always followed a gun her whole life. I was like, how do I get her to look at different guns without talking to her? Like, I had no concept of how to do that. and I think you were like, oh, that's the question you have?
Well, and was it easier than you thought?
Oh, yeah. Now it's just like, you just point them out, and then if you just step up, they just naturally figure it out after like 20 times of because the thing I never had realized in my book study how much that attention getter, how important it is, because I had never had an attention getter before.
And and it's the one thing that that I get somewhat frustrated when I work with some hunt test folks is that let's just all these games are artificial. We're not hunting. We're trying to simulate it. I get it.
Yeah.
I said it's like all-star wrestling, right?
Yeah.
We're not wrestling. I mean, it's fake, but you're trying to, and it's okay. But there are people in the field. There's artificial factors that the dogs learn to use to retrieve. And that doesn't mean, all that tells me is they're smart, they're adaptable. And so the more they get used to encountering human scent and all of the artificial things that happen on a marked retrieve or a blind retrieve, the more successful they're going to be. And so getting dogs used to seeing guns and then changing the way the bird is presented, whether it's you're blowing a duck call and shooting and the bird comes out from behind a bush versus a person that's visible, I think they adapt to that pretty quickly. I remember one of the nicest dogs I had, actually a lady from Illinois, and this dog had just finished a national that she was an eyelash from winning. And I went dove hunting in North Carolina right afterwards. The national was in Savannah, Georgia. And this dog had never been hunted in her life. And in an hour, this dog learned to follow dove, and they're not very big birds. And I was blown away how quickly she could mark and pinpoint dove that were shot, a much smaller bird, not as far, obviously, but she was smart, she was keen. And I just realized, we were, field trials are like the NFL combine. You're judging their speed, you're judging how high they can jump, and you're judging all the qualities it takes to be a canine athlete hunting dog. You just maybe don't use them all the time in the same way. But when they've got all the skill sets, what you do with those skill sets, well, that's kind of up to us. And the dogs really adapt quickly to all the above, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's great stuff. Very good. So before we talk about some of the other stuff that you're doing, one of my buddies wanted to know, he wanted to hear about some of the dogs that you worked with,
okay,
that you felt like really were set apart, and how quickly did you know that they were kind of different?
Well, I'm going to tell you, certainly, probably the dog that is probably the most fantastic dog that I was around. And and at that time there were a bunch of them that I was on my truck that had great, generous owners, was a dog named Cherokee Rose. Rose won the 2003 National Amateur, but Rose, other than, from what I could tell, River Oaks Corky, but since 1988, Rose completed more national series than any other dog in in AKC history in that time. So she was set apart. She was different from day one. Now, I didn't start her. She was a Derby dog that I looked at and John Russell bought, and we redid her basics. Jeff Adams from Ohio, who's trained a bunch of nice dogs, owned her. And so Cherokee Rose was you knew she was different. And some of those great dogs, they had a knack of making hard things look easy, and they also sometimes made easy things look hard. But then I'll tell you another story of a dog that I got in training and was 2 and change, and from an owner that I hadn't worked with before, and I was commenting what a nice dog this was, and I was excited about it. And a couple of the other clients laughed at me a little bit and said, you washed this dog out. I said, I what? And this dog was owned by a different owner and coming out of basics, and the owner wanted kind of I want to know if this is a great dog or not. And I didn't see it. And, well, I got that dog back, and the national, the Laura Parrott one, he was a finalist, and it was like between Laura and me, and his name was Diamond D's Klondike. His name was Ice, and he finished multiple nationals, and he was he was a really, really good dog. Any dog that qualifies for that many and that nationally competitive certainly is a pretty close to a great dog. But I didn't see it as a puppy, so he was a late bloomer. So he taught me to, don't jump to quick conclusions. I did purchase. I had clients that wanted to buy dogs, and oftentimes the dogs that left the biggest and most exciting impression in the beginning weren't what they were cut out to be. And some of the dogs that I had to look for the qualities ended up being the better ones. So it's not that obvious. Now, the really bad ones, when you get into desire or big temperament flaws, that's not that, but you don't see that many of those. But I have learned to look really hard for the qualities that aren't obvious and find a way to bring them out. And, certainly one of the nicest dogs I talked about being from your area was a dog named Candlewood's Captain Kidd. And Cappy got 200 all-age points. So when you figure you get 5 points for an all-age win, 200 points you're an elite group. Now, Cappy was a gullible, and I almost said he was a simple dog. Simple-minded. He wasn't stupid, but he wasn't brilliant. And he was just aw shucks and a wonderful dog. And so, people say, and I've said that I've trained a number of really good dogs that there wasn't a lot going on inside their head. They wanted a bird. They liked to be petted. They had a few things. And then, then there were the dogs that were real thinkers. At that time when Cappy was there, we had a dog named Hawkeye's Candlewood Shadow. You see him on a lot of pedigrees. Shadow was, and if you saw Shadow day in and day out, he was C-. He was a little bit of a loafer, didn't give you a ton of effort. It was nice, but he didn't show it to you. He didn't show you if you condition dogs, he was always the one in the back of the pack. If you're running laps, he's the guy that's trying to cut the corners, doesn't want to work that hard. And that was Shadow, and he was a different type of dog. That little dog named Chick that I told you I took dove hunting was really one of the most spectacular dogs, markers, and courageous dogs. And if you looked at her, she was not much of a physical specimen, but she was washed out by another really good professional. And an assistant I had at the time named Dan Denicus said, you need to look at this dog. There's something about her that's a little bit different. And he had a little glimmer. And oh my God, she ended up being probably one of the top 4 or 5 dogs that left an impression in my career. And she was kind of fragile. You had to treat her different, but psychologically fragile, but physically one of the most spectacular natural dogs in stump ponds and boat marks in a marsh situation that I ever was around. Chick, I remember I came back from Texas, and we ran a trial down in Southern Illinois at Ren Lake early April. And I think the ice had only been off a couple weeks. Water was frigid. And last series of the Open, they had a 20-minute water quad, which seemed insane. And I had another dog that almost got hypothermia, was really, and I thought, this is nuts. Well, Chick, who was skin and bones, goes out there and hammers this quad, wins the Open, comes off like nothing. The owner picks her up, has to go over and run a water blind 10 minutes later, and she did that without even blinking. And she didn't do it out of fear or discipline. She was not wired that way. She just didn't see it. She didn't feel things like that. And she didn't have oodles of desire. She was just, I mean, she would lay in your living room and you'd no more think she was a high-end field trial dog than the man on the moon. So I guess I've seen them from all different types. And then there's the, Grady and Chad Baker's Grady, and you look at Linda Bose's Jerry Lee, and you looked at some of those. They were athletes. They, if they were humans, they would be NBA, NFL. They were physical phenoms. You could just, but there were a lot of them that weren't that way. And so I guess I learned pretty quickly that they come in all shapes, colors, and sizes. Certainly one of my proudest accomplishments, as I look back on, was that first year I went to work for Mike Lardy, and I had a basics crew. I was working with another gentleman, and we had, I think, 12 or 13 dogs. And out of that basics crew, there was a Golden Field Trial champion, a Chesapeake Field Trial champion, and multiple Labrador Field Trial champions. And so when you think all breeds, when you only had 12 dogs, actually the Chesapeake, Mitch and Linda Patterson from Illinois ended up being a Retriever Hall of Fame. The Golden,
they were. We trained with them this week. They were at Sharon's.
Wonderful people.
And Charlie's. Yeah.
The Golden won a doubleheader. I just think of so I just had the joy and opportunity to be around many different breeds, many different programs. So I just take on every time I do a workshop and every time I work with people today in my courses and my online membership format as a challenge to say, all right, what can I do to help you and this dog be one click better, just one hair better? And that's where it starts. And that's when I think of Chick and I think of these dogs that I just saw a glimmer. Some of the greatest dogs, more would have thought they were going to be great dogs than, like I said, the man on the moon. And they just got a little better and a little better. And I learned to say, you don't know how high that elevator is going to go. You just keep providing the atmosphere, good training, a format, and let them build. And great things can happen.
That's good. I love that. How did you say that? You never know how high the ceiling.
The elevator's going to go.
The elevator. How high is the elevator going to go? That's
beautiful. Oh, I know, and that's exactly right. And Kelsey Weir she was editor Retriever News. She's in Minnesota, and she comes down with this dog. And this winter, her older dog was injured, and this dog was running around, and she was very frustrated. She said, "This dog can't even make a decent hunt test dog at first." But he had good integrity, and he felt like he wanted to do the right thing, and he got a little better. He had constant improvement, and by the end of the winter, and he ended up being really good in the water naturally. And I think she entered him, and he won 2 of his first 3 qualifyings. And she said, "I cannot believe this dog." And there was another example. But if you would have looked at this dog to buy, he looked like a blithering idiot. But sometimes I say they can't be as bad as they look. I said, this has got to be the absolute rock bottom of this dog. I want to see how high that elevator is going to go. And let's just let it play out. And, and if you can be patient, people want to, draw conclusions. Some of the dogs with the most desire had the least desire as young dogs. So they're going to transform. They're all going to change. And you just got to figure out what formula motivates them to give you their greatest degree of effort, what language they speak, and how can I, become a teammate with them.
Yeah. Very good. So as we transition is kind of talking about some of more of the coaching and your courses and things of that nature. One of my buddies said you host a lot of these master classes, and you've interviewed a lot of really, really great folks. Without making any of your friends mad, which one is one of your favorites that you think people should go look up after listening to this podcast?
Well, and the master classes are such a variety. two of them I think that people need to look at are not necessarily trainers. Well, Arlie is a trainer, but Dr. Arlie Reynolds, I did 2 podcasts with him about, my understanding of performance nutrition and conditioning. And I'm actually headed to Sitka, Alaska to see him next week. But that was an incredible, Arlie is just smarter than you can even imagine, but he's so generous with helping us understand what we need to do to protect and fuel our dogs. It would be hard to, certainly my time with Mike Lardy, the years I spent with Mike, he's a training genius. He's always looked at things differently. I've done a couple of them with Mike. I also have an expert insight forum series that I did. And Danny Farmer was on that series. And Danny, without a doubt, and I've had Danny, I've interviewed him a few different times. This guy is, as far as a fierce, intense competitor and a gamer, I mean, there's nobody hungrier to win than Danny. And I don't think there's many people that have the gut instinct to understand high-level dogs and the motivation to get the most out of them as much as he does. And so one of the Expert Insight Forum guests, it's not a Purina Masterclass, but it was on the same format, was really, I talked to Danny about his game day what he does on game day, how he pays attention, how does he watch other dogs, how does he make adjustments. I think that was really interesting, and Danny really opened up with that. I did a great
one. Is that one that is public, or is that one that's through your?
It is through my website. It was a part of a paid series, but if people contact me, Danny's stuff is, and it was, I think, initially they could, they were watching that course was like a $35 window to watch that, because I begged these guys, I paid them well, and I said, all right, give me all you got, and they did. And so I did a six-part series, and Danny, Mike, Jim Van Egan, Wayne Curtis, Pat Nolan, Judy Aycock. I think some of the true legends were all in that series, and I picked a different subject for all of them to talk about, and so those were all fun. I'll tell you,
and that we can purchase now, or no?
Yeah, you could certainly, if you go onto our website, eliteretrievers.com, and you inquire through the website, it'll be info@eliteretrievers.com, but it'll take you there automatically. My dear darling wife, Robin, she is customer service excellence. So she'll be the one that'll make all that happen. And if questions come to me and I'm not getting to them, she'll make me answer them. So that would be a way to get that done.
If I remember right, that's how I got a hold of you.
Oh, she's the one. And, and I'm the big picture guy. She's the detail person. So she gets the details done, and she keeps me, team. She keeps, it's like herding cats, she says. And that's, we all heard that. Certainly one of the other great master classes I did with one of the premier herding dog, border collie trainers from South Africa. He lives here in the United States. And we talked about how they motivate, border collies, and how they achieve the control they do, and how they break down the things they do. Because, I felt when I watched some of that, I thought field trial dogs were incredible. Then I saw what these dogs could do at 600, 700, 800 yards away, and it was unbelievable. So Fonzie Bassan was his name. That's wonderful.
A good name.
Yeah, Fonzie, just like Fonzie from the original Fonzie. But articulate guy, great thinker, just super cool. That was a Purina masterclass. And I'm getting ready to interview Clyde Vetter and his wife Marilyn. They're Navda people, mostly German Shorthairs, but Marilyn is the CEO of Pheasants Forever and Quail Unlimited. She's done a tremendous amount for the world of all of us in the world of hunting. And I saw her at Pheasant Fest and was really blown away. And Clyde and Marilyn are going to be guests of mine actually in August. So we do 6 master classes a year, sponsored by Purina, and we try to come up with some very interesting guests. We had a veterinarian, Sarah Scholl from Michigan, talking about health clearances and things to look at and things like that. So it's really not just a dog training thing. It's about canine wellness and training different breeds. So
yeah,
I just dig it. And when I do those, I don't even know the audience is there. I said, we're just having a conversation and everybody else is eavesdropping.
Yeah. Well, that's how I feel every time I do one of these.
Yeah. And that's what's fun about it.
Good.
That's what's fun about it.
So we kind of jumped in there a little bit to some of your things. So there's a lot, you got a lot going on with your coaching. Kind of give me like the big overview here.
Certainly. Well, I mean, I grew up playing athletics in junior high and early high school until I quit growing. And then I figured I had to do something different. But my brother's been a coach. I'm always an avid sports person, and I've always thought of training that way. And I've always loved the great coaches, whether it was Lombardi and even Bobby Knight, and certainly Mike Krzyzewski and so I always followed that mentorship, John Wooden, that whole philosophy of coaching people and coaching dogs at the same time. So when I had the opportunity to put together some digital courses, I started with a course called Line Mechanics for Success, and everything was focused on everything that happens between the truck and the line, and virtually nothing out in the field. So, and I said line mechanics because line manners are a portion of line mechanics. But then, the one thing I learned through sports is to isolate certain skill sets and break them down to its smallest part, and then work on those skill sets and then put them together. And so that was intentional for that. When I first started, and I talked when I went to California, I learned the origin of what we all do today in a basics program. They're all variations of what Rex Carr started. So I was a real student, and I was taught how to do basics, what the intent was. And my next course was a course called Bomb-Proof Basics. And that was where I followed 3 dogs entirely through basics, where I coached 3 owners who had not done a basics dog in that format before to do it. I stepped in at times. I talked them off the ledge at times. And I showed the rough days and the good days. And I tried to really explain the principles behind and the deeper meaning of what we were doing, rather than just checking the boxes, and what our final goal was, and what we wanted that finished dog to look like, and how it was going to carry us to a 6, 7, and 8-year-old dog. That was a course that took me a year and a half to edit, and has about 20 hours of training video, and was an exhausting measure, but it was my passion project. And so each year, twice a year, that opens up, and I do classes. I do essentially, I cover different modules. The group comes on, anybody who's purchased it, and we have a discussion about basics. They're telling me about problems they're having. I'm showing videos. I'm trying to break it down and further explain it. So the Bomb-Proof Basics course is one of the other courses. And then that led into really what I'm spending the majority of my efforts now in, a membership program. And that is an ongoing support system that, and one of the great things about the membership is it pulls material from all the other courses. And I've got people that join monthly and join annually. And when they're there, now we're up to almost 500 videos from September of 23. And each week I provide a video based on the topic of the month. And the audience helps me dictate where we want to go. I poll everybody. I said, what do you want to hear about? And I put together, as best I can, a program that speaks to dogs from pre-basics through advanced field trial work and hunt test and everything in between. And so along with weekly material, the format it's a searchable format, which is so cool because if you type in a question, it'll take you to if you ask about Danny Farmer and game day, it's going to take you to that video, and it's going to bring up, if you want to know what he did on how he handles blinds, it's going to take you to the timestamp in that video. So it's a great format to find information quickly. People also interact with me. I have I'll answer questions. I do it through a video ask, a face-to-face question and answer deal for problem solving. We do monthly calls. We call pop-up office hours, where we just do open Q&A. I'm continuing to expand it. Ray Vogt has joined as a correspondent. Ray's going to be doing more. Ray's a great dog mind, a fun guy, great sense of humor. And so he's going to be hosting this from time to time. We started Voices from the Field. I've had expert guests periodically, and everything that I've ever done is taped and saved on the membership. So if you join now, you get everything that's ever happened. And so it's overwhelming, but the Voices from the Field series, I had 3 of the top field trial amateurs, Lauren Hayes, Robbie Bickley, and Sammy Thompson. And we did that a couple weeks ago. And I asked them some questions. The audience, the membership came on. They got to interact with them, answered all their questions. It was awesome. My next group, and it's going to be 3 top level hunt test professionals, Rody Best, Stephen Durrance, and Tyler Patterson. And these guys are great guys. I've interviewed, I haven't had Tyler on before, but I've spent time with them. And I'm going to create an open atmosphere for the audience to ask questions that they're burning questions to these guys. And I'm going to pry it out of them. So it's just something fun. And I guess it indulges me to get me excited to talk dogs and do what I've done and include as many people as I can. And it's so cool. I was in Brandon, Manitoba, and so many of the people were members, and I got to meet the faces and meet the dogs behind the members. And same thing at the HRC Grand. So many people that I'd seen their names, but I didn't really know them. And if it isn't obvious, I'm really excited about it. We're opening enrollment here shortly. And so if somebody wants to, dip their toes in the water, you can do it on a monthly thing. Check it out. We'll give you a tour of what's available. But I think it's about as much information as you can squeeze into something like that. And the cool thing, like I said, is these other courses are standalone courses, but it pulls from all of the information from every masterclass, everything that I've done in the last, 12 years and 40 plus years of experience.
Yeah. So my question is, are you putting those keywords in, or is Robin doing it?
Well,
to make that sense.
Well, she certainly coaches me because she's the marketer, but she's not the dog person. And I know, so I got talked about, like she said, and one of the people say, you're doing coach speak. And I said, what's that mean? Well, you're giving all the buzzwords, like, effort level, like all the coaches do when they don't want to say anything in an interview. And I'm saying, well, maybe I do that, but I do think that way. But I try to be, I try to think of us and the dogs as athletes, and that's the way I approach this, and and that's the way my mind works. So, but I guess the buzzwords, Robin does. She's not holding cards up in front of me right now, but she's been known to do that.
Yeah. It takes a team.
Oh, absolutely. But it does. Well, and she puts it all together, and she's the customer service person. And, if anybody has questions or what, don't hesitate to reach out. I've certainly helped people that aren't members. There's a lot of free material. There's a wagon wheel course in there that's free. All the master classes are free. There's a lot of information there that you can access without spending a dime. But
it's good stuff. I
love having you.
There is so much good material that's out there now, and I really have appreciated your master classes. the one on tune-up drills that you and Lardy did was very impactful. That was a really good one. That was one of my favorites that you did. That was during COVID when, it was like a whole new thing, and I remember that was.
That's when it all started. That's when Robin, and she sat me down and she said, somebody actually a membership type program or a digital course said, what are you going to do after COVID? Are you going to turn this into something positive? And it's exactly what we did. I mean, it was like, we're going to do what? And we did it. And I love it. And I have a hard time saying no, and I keep doing more. And, I'd love to go do, some other things and go see other things, but I say yes to Purina and yes to Garmin and yes to this. And and man, I'll tell you what, going to that SRS and seeing the perspective with their filming and their film crew that they offer, with the opportunity for somebody, not just like myself, to continually commentate. I don't know where you could ever get a better opportunity to watch dogs do natural things at the angle that you would get, with the perception you would get with somebody explaining what's going on. I mean, I had no idea when I went there the first time. And if you told me I'd have to sit there 11 hours and keep talking about dogs, I thought that's going to be hard to do, but it was anything but hard. It was just
It used to, when I used to work in an office, it was like a lot of people would have when big soccer games are happening or the World Cup or whatever. Now, for me, it was, I had an extra computer I'd bring in and I'd set up, and it just ran the Crown. And, for the last couple of years, it was just listening to Pat talk about stuff.
Well, I'm an ESPN guy. And when I hear the analyst and I want to hear the guys that have been there, listening to Nick Saban talk on College Game Day was like, was he the most dynamic guy? No, but man, oh man. I mean, you could just, you just had an insight into that world. And that's what I try to offer, an insight into the world that I've done, spent my entire life at. Fortunate enough to be around True Mark Zip Code and Aces High and some of the, really, really great dogs, and put that into perspective for the average guy to say, you know what? I watched Aces High, Jerry Potopia. He was the premier dog in the country at the time. And you didn't think he could win a qualifying stake in training half the time. And, they put their pants on the same way. And people need to be encouraged with that, when you don't know any better and your dog has a rough day, you really want to get down on it. And I'm always trying to find the silver lining. And there always is. Because listen, guys, one of the greatest comments I ever got from a client, Fred Musoni, said, Pat, in the department store of life, this is the toy department. So I've spent my life in the toy department, and that's the way I look at it.
That's great. I love that. Well, Pat, we've been going for just over an hour. I appreciate your time. This is great. I do think it'd be great to do an episode where we pick like 3 or 5 topics and like training scenarios or something. Like you and I should talk about it, and we should do that.
Well, I'm all in. It's just a matter of you put it together. I'll find a window to do it. I mean, you can see I'm in my studio. It's easy for me to do this. I had everything set up because I've been producing the next 3 weeks worth of projects. And so it wasn't a big deal. I'd love to do it. And anytime I can talk dogs. And I tell people at my workshops, you're going to get the thing I'm going to promise you. I'm not going to promise you I'm going to be right all the time, but I will promise you I'm going to be honest, and I'm going to tell you why I feel the way I feel. And I really welcome differing opinions, lively debate, different discussions. That's how we all figure this out. So,
well, we should have a debate.
Bring it on. I love it.
There's a big thing in my training group about the double T. So I'm curious, do you still promote and do the double T?
I do. I absolutely do. Now, the only reason, I say this, I said double T, I think, is the most important step in basics, not because it's double T, but because it puts everything together. Now, there's certainly different ways you could do it. Mm-hmm. And I often ask, well, give me an argument why not to do the double T. That's what I want to hear. And if the argument is that it's really, you don't have to do that much, or it doesn't have to be that long, or it doesn't have to be that thorough, then I'm going to be a skeptic, because
we could have a debate.
If your philosophy in doing basics is to make it go faster and quicker, then I think it's a risky way to approach it. And it's not been the way that I believe is best. And it's not about the double T. It's about doing something that puts everything together so that when you step into the water, you've got all the tools and all the things ironed out. So there's no surprises.
Yeah. 100%. I'd love to have that conversation.
I'm in.
Because I don't do the double T, but I do 3 additional things that I'm trying to probably accomplish the exact same thing, because I want to be thorough. But I think it simplifies it for the dogs, so they pick it up faster.
I get it.
Not to go faster through the process, to make the learning steps a little bit simpler is what I
totally. And there's a lot of different ways to get to Mecca, and so I just want to see the finished product. If the finished product's got all of these things work, I think it's awesome.
Yeah.
The reason I say double T is because it's what I've learned, it's what I believe, it's what I've watched. But I without a doubt, I mean, Rex is the guy that turned around and did a total different program, and everybody thought he was crazy. Well, he wasn't.
Yeah.
And Chris might be the guy that goes a different direction and finds a better way. And I'm all in. And I love innovation. I love hearing about new thoughts.
Yeah. I think the discussion is what's really valuable, because there's I think, I can't remember if it was Ray that I talked to about this. I think it was on the podcast that's coming out before this one. And I said, rather than people doing a flow chart of drills, I would love to sit down and do a flow chart of the things that the dog needs to learn,
right?
Not the drills that lead to that learning,
right?
And
it's
look
the
at
reverse
it from a different
engineering.
perspective. Reverse engineering, just so people would have a better understanding of what, because they don't see. I train with a lot of amateurs, and they don't see the aha moments. They don't know how to read the dog for the aha moments of the dog that clicked with that dog. He's got that. Now we need to reinforce that understanding. But I saw the glimpse of the understanding there.
Yeah.
Of what a discipline cast is about. Okay, he saw, they clicked with him. Oh, this is what I'm doing.
Doesn't that it just makes you smile, doesn't it? I mean, when you see that, totally. I mean, that's what I said. If you could teach one dog one new thing a day, if you have one aha moment, it just like that's what energizes you. So I'm all about beginning with the end in mind. I'm all about looking at here's where we need to get to, and then reverse engineer the process. And I love hearing different thinking, and I'm not going to be closed-minded. I've always said I want to be an open-minded guy. There's reasons why, and I've evolved in the things I've done. But you're right. You have a pattern. You've done what's worked. But I'm always interested in hearing about a better mousetrap.
Yeah, and I didn't invent the mousetrap. I saw somebody else do it, so I don't want it to be considered the Chris technique or anything like that. But Pat, I appreciate it, man. This was awesome. Thank you so much for joining, and I can't wait to do the next one.
All right, Chris. Give me a shout anytime. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.